Hello everybody. Today I'll talk about a very interesting topic, which is the production of speech, human speech production. There is a difference between the speech and the language. Sometimes we think that they are same, but they are not exactly same. Speech is the process of producing specific sounds that convey meaning to the listener. So that is the speech. Language is the speech, but that can be different in different culture, right? So the meaning um, may not be understandable by another group of people. Okay, so speech is more general, and language is more like specific to specific culture. Anyway, so as I mentioned before, that all the human auditory perception is not very well developed or not very sophisticated like many other creatures. However, the ability to learn the language and produce it or mimic it or imitate it, that ability is very good in human brain. Okay, so human brain can process the learning of the speech and reproduce it. As you know, that a human baby learns how to produce speech. That is a learning process. Okay, so in speech you have sensory input, that means the listening that helps you to learn, and also after you listen you have to memorize it, and then the motor output to produce the speech. So sensory input, memorization, and motor output all are involved in the learning and producing the speech. So it is a very complex process, and as you know that speech is related to learning. However, the production of sound is another thing. We don't need to learn to produce the sound. A human baby, cries just after the birth. Nobody needs to teach how to cry, right? So that is innate or by birth. That is not by learning. However, speech and language, you need a lot of learning. So meaningless sound that is not related to learning, that is more like innate and determined by the genes, genetically determined, right? How human baby will produce sound, those are innate and mainly genetically determined. However, the language and speech, those are acquired. We learn after birth. So first we'll see how the sound is produced. Okay, so first is the sound, right? So the entire process can be divided into three parts. We can say that the mechanism of speech consists of three central processes or mechanisms. The first is the respiration, and then phonation, and last mechanism is articulation. Those are the three central mechanisms. Now first, respiration. As you know that we breathe by our lungs, and when the lungs contract, the air is pushed out, right? That is the energy for phonation. That is called the phonetic air. The lungs create that energy to move the air out, the outwards motion of the air. You know that we have the respiratory muscles, right? Respiratory muscles. Two most important respiratory muscles are external intercostal between the ribs, in the chest wall, and in the bottom of the lung you have the diaphragm. Okay. And when these muscles contract, lung expand, and when these muscles relax, the lung, since it is elastic, highly elastic, it recoils, gets smaller, squeezes, and that creates positive pressure inside the lung to expel the air outwards. Okay, so through the trachea, the air from the lungs will start to get out. Okay, and this part is the larynx. You see that this part is the larynx, just above the trachea. This is the part of the trachea. Okay, so larynx is known as the voice box, and trachea is known as the windpipe. Okay, so this is the larynx or voice box. Okay, inside the larynx you have the vocal folds and vestibular folds. The upper folds are the vestibular and lower folds are vocal folds or cords. Okay, so this is a hemisection of your respiratory tract. So you can see one side, that's why you see one vestibular fold and one vocal fold or vocal cord. And if you make a coronal section or frontal section that divides front and back parts, you can see the way how they are inside the larynx. So this is inside the larynx, that means laryngeal cavity is here. Okay, and almost in the middle of the laryngeal cavity, just behind your Adam's apple, which is called the thyroid cartilage. This one, cartilage. These are laryngeal cartilages. This is cricoid cartilage. Okay, here you can see these are vestibular folds, and vestibular folds are also known as false vocal folds because they are not related to the production of sound. Vocal folds are true vocal folds, these two. Okay, and vestibular folds are above and vocal folds are below or inferior to the vestibular folds. Vestibular folds actually protect the vocal folds. Okay, and you can see the vestibular folds have ligaments inside, and the ligaments are covered by mucosa. Okay, so that's how the structure of the vestibular fold. Okay, now if you see the vocal fold, these two, the structure of the vocal fold is like this. Outermost part is the mucosa. Okay, then you have the ligament, the middle part is the ligament, and innermost part is the muscle. Okay, so this is the muscle, and this is the ligament, and this is the mucosa, and this ligament is called cricothyroid ligament. It is a part-free medial edge of cricothyroid ligament. Cricothyroid. If you see the area inside the larynx, as I told you, this part is the larynx, right? And this part is above, and that is the supraglottis part. Okay, supra means above, and remember the glottis is the opening here between the vocal folds. So this is the glottis. The glottis, that opening, changes a lot during the speech production. Okay, and so this part is the supraglottal part, and then this part is also known as vestibular part, vestibular or supraglottal part. And the middle portion here, you see between the vestibular fold and vocal fold, this sinus is called the ventricle. So it is actually this part, ventricle. Okay, and this part below the glottis, this is the glottis, this is the subglottal or infraglottal part. So vestibular part, then the sinus that is between the vestibular and vocal folds, that's the ventricle, and then infraglottic cavity. What happens when we push the air out by squeezing the lungs, that air, phonetic air, okay, hits the vocal folds, and that vibrates the vocal folds. The vibration of the vocal fold produces the sound. Okay, and the ability of the vocal folds to vibrate is more in female than the male. In female, adult female, the vocal folds can vibrate at around 200 times per second. The frequency is higher, okay, 200 cycles. In adult male, it is around 120 cycles per second. Okay, so that is the rate of vibration of the vocal cord in normal speech, during the normal speech production. Okay, so that's how the sound is created. Okay, now that is the phonetic part or phonation. Okay, production of sound by the vocal folds. Okay, and then the last part is the articulation. So when that sound enters into the upper part of the vocal tract, a number of structures modulate that sound. Okay, many structures are involved in this last process, articulation process, and some structures are kind of fixed structures, for example teeth or palate, right? And some structures are very flexible, they are not fixed. For example, tongue, right? We always move the tongue, soft palate or lips, right? So also facial muscles, cheek. By using those structures, we learn how to modulate that sound. Okay, and that part is more related to the speech and language. So those are the three important central mechanisms of production of the speech and the structures involved in the speech production. Now, as you know, that speech could be many different types, right? When we breathe, almost no sound, right? So we will say that no speech, the glottis is open wide. Glottis is this opening between the vocal folds, is open wide, so the air can easily pass through it. And during normal breathing, we'll say no voice, right? There could be a little bit sound, but no voice. then we talk. When we talk normally, that's the normal voice, right? Then voice could be whispering, like we whisper. Then it could be also breathy voice, right? Uh, Creaky voice. And another is the falsetto. When you sing, you sometimes use the long of song, that is the falsetto. Falsetto. Ooh, ooh, that kind of uh, sound. You know that phonetic air is the expiratory air. However, when we breathe normally, we have two steps, right? Inspiration and then expiration. Inspiration, expiration. So this is inspiration, this is expiration, this is inspiration, this is expiration, right? Usually 2 to 3 seconds each phase. So total like 5 to 6 seconds for one cycle of respiration. However, when we produce sound, what happens, this expiratory part, the duration of the expiration changes a lot. Okay, so we don't end usually in 2 seconds. We talk longer, so we use that expiratory air and slowly release it during the production of speech. Makes sense? And when you sing, like you of course take deep inspiration and then slowly release the uh, expiratory air or phonetic air, and then modulate it in different ways. Okay, so the air that we expel out from the lung, that is the phonetic air, and that is also known as pulmonic air stream, that originates in the lungs. Okay, pulmonic air stream. So lung based, and then when the air passes through the glottis, and that is the glottic air stream. Glottic air stream. Okay, and the last part, when it arrives in the mouth, that is the valeric air stream. So this is by the vocal folds, and this one inside the mouth is mainly by the tongue, the tip part and the back part of the tongue. That means front and back of the tongue. Okay. So that's all about the human vocalization and how we produce the speech. Okay, speech production. Now you know that there could be many clinical conditions. Those are related to the speech difficulty or disorders. Some are related to the genes, genetic disorders, and some are related to the diseases of your sensory motor part of the brain or functions of the brain. Okay. Now, speech disorders are three major types of speech disorders. One is called stuttering, Stuttering is that could be like repetition or block during speech or prolongation. And stuttering is mainly a developmental disorder. Another type is called apraxia, is a motor disorder. You know that the motor part of the brain uh, sends signal to the vocal cords and the muscles. Disorder is in the motor part of the brain that is known as apraxia. And another reason could be due to weakness of the muscle, for example tongue, face, and those muscles weakness. So this is more like muscular disorder, right? This is called dysarthria, more related to coordination disorder in the motor part of the brain, and this is more related to the weakness of the muscle. Okay. And okay, human speech is very similar to the bird song in many ways. Okay. And that's why many neuroscientists, they are very interested to understand the mechanisms of bird song, and if you can understand how the bird sings, then you can implement that idea to understand the human speech and um, resolve the problems related to the human speech or human speech disorders can be uh, explained. How the bird song is similar to human speech. As I mentioned, that a small human baby learns how to speak or produce speech from the parent. Same way, the infant bird or baby bird learns how to sing from the parent. Okay. And first, human baby listens, right, the parent's sound, and then try to memorize, and then try to reproduce or mimic that, or imitate that. Same way, the birds listen the parent's song and try to memorize, and then produce the song. Okay. By practice it learns. So sensory, then memorization, and then motor output. Sensory, memorization, and motor output to the vocal folds. Okay. Sensory from the ear goes to the brain, and in the brain you have the memory system, and then from the motor cortex is sent to the vocal cord to produce the sound. So that's why understanding the bird song is very important. So you see here, songbirds stutter, babble when young, and becomes mute or silent if parts of the brain are damaged. Okay. And learn how to sing from their elders, usually male parent. Okay. And a lot of things are shared or similar to the human speech learning, and therefore understanding of bird song mechanism is very interesting and important. Okay. Interestingly, not all birds are songbirds. Not all the birds sing. Almost half of the birds are non-song birds. Okay, and some birds continuously produce song throughout the day. Okay, some birds produce less song. For example, red-eyed vireo, this species of birds produce more than 20,000 songs a day. Okay, and birds mostly sing during a certain season, and when they look for the mates or female birds. And interestingly, the songbirds are usually male birds. So male birds sing, female birds listen. Okay, so here you can see this is a male bird, this is a female bird, and during the season of mating, the male bird will produce beautiful song to attract the female bird, and the female bird judges the quality of the song, and that's how they select the male partner. Okay, and as I mentioned that baby bird or pupil learns the song from the male parent, that means the tutor. Okay, so that is one important reason why birds sing. Birds don't sing for us, although we enjoy the bird songs, and the bird songs are actually between 2,000 to 8,000 hertz. That is the normal range of frequency of bird song, which is very suitable for human listeners. Okay, it's like sweet spot of human auditory system. So we enjoy the bird song, but birds don't sing for us. Birds sing to attract the female, or to maintain the territory. And by listening the song, this other birds from other territory can tell that this is a different territory. Although same species of bird, when they move from one territory to another, they can recognize that this is a different territory, because each territory's song is slightly different than others, and that's how they maintain their territory, integrity of the territory. Okay, there is a difference between the bird call and song. Okay, we'll talk about that. Just know that calls are not to attract the mate or maintain the territory. Calls are to communicate each other, or to send any alarm, or any kind of information like food or some other information. But songs are different. Songs are long and has more notes in it, and soothing to listen, but calls are not. So they use calls and songs for different purposes. Okay. Here just you can see the sonogram, and you can actually record the bird song and analyze the frequency, intensity, as well as the notes and syllables. So all those things are now much easier because you can record and analyze in the computer. Okay. So the spectrogram or sonogram is the recording, and you can analyze each component of the song. Okay. As I mentioned, that songs are prolonged and more complex and melodious and soothing than the calls. Okay. And calls are short, simple sound, and birds use them all seasons, not only during the mating. And calls are used for interacting with the family members and alerting about the predators, or keeping touch while flying, and sharing information about the food. Okay. So here you see that all these are songbirds, and you can look at the sonogram and can tell that the notes are very different from each other, but all of those are prolonged, and three different species of birds, and they sing differently. Here you can see that again the recording from two different species of songbirds, fairy wren and alpine birds, and you can see the spectrogram or sonogram, and here you can see the frequency in y-axis here, and time is this way, and the thickness of the sonogram is showing the intensity. Okay. So for example, this one intensity is high than this one. This one, the line is thin, this one is thick. Okay. So you can see that two different species produce different notes and different songs. In my last slide, I mentioned that many bird songs have frequency ranges between I mentioned 2000. You can lower it like 1000 to 8000 hertz, which places them in the sweet spot of human hearing. Okay, so this is something very interesting, that even if you record from the same species the song from the birds of same species but from different territories, as I mentioned, you will see that slightly they are different, the songs are different. There's a very interesting experiment which was done by Dr. Konishi from Caltech. He recorded the bird songs from all over the west coast, from all the way to from San Diego to Seattle, Washington, and he recorded the bird songs, same species, finches, and they found that um, although they are very similar but not exactly same, so different areas, uh, birds sing slightly different, and that's how they know that this is not their own territory, this is a different territory. Okay, and as I mentioned that the song composed of stereotyped units called syllables. Okay, and each syllable consisting of notes. So there are notes, and syllables or sentences are syntax. Birds produce song, and the way they learn to sing is very similar to human. Uh, Also, there are some birds, they are very interesting, they are very good, they are not songbirds, but they are very good in mimicking the sound they listen. Okay, for example, parrots, you know that they can talk, they listen and learn to talk like human. So they are mimicking, or imitating part of the brain is more developed than the songbirds. Songbirds learn and produce song, uh, but they don't mimic or um, uh, imitate other sounds. They learn from their parent and produce the parents song. But some birds, they are not songbirds, but they are very good in learning um, speech from other uh, things like a human, or any other sound or other creatures. So that is another interesting thing about the birds. Um, Anyway, so we'll stop here this part. In next lecture, I'll talk more about the neuroscience of bird song production. Okay, thank you.